Let me give you one number, and I want you to actually sit with it before I say anything else. 4 million. That's how many international visitors simply did not show up to the United States in 2025 compared to the year before. Not a rounding error. A 5.5% collapse in foreign tourism, the steepest single-year drop in 2 decades, outside of a pandemic. And what makes it genuinely jaw-dropping is the context sitting right next to it. Globally, roughly 80 million more people were traveling internationally that year than ever before in recorded history. The world didn't stop moving. It just stopped moving toward America. Now, here's the part that nobody is leading with. And honestly, it's the detail that reframes this entire story the moment you understand it. The country responsible for the single biggest chunk of that collapse wasn't China. It wasn't a major European economy. It wasn't somewhere in the Middle East. It was Canada. Us, the neighbor, the closest ally, the country that shares the longest peaceful border on the planet. And by the time this video is done, I think you'll understand exactly why that happened, why it connects to the most expensive sporting event in human history, and why all of it lands directly on this continent's reputation for the next decade. Because last Sunday morning, on a tarmac in Johannesburg, something happened that looked like a minor bureaucratic footnote, but turned out to be the perfect opening frame for everything we're about to get into. South Africa's national football team, over 20 players and staff, sat inside a charter jet that wouldn't leave. Their visas to enter North America hadn't been processed in time. This is the team scheduled to play the very first match of the 2026 World Cup, kicking off against co-host Mexico on June 11th. Their sports minister went in front of cameras and told the world his country was being made to look like fools. Embarrassing. Grossly unfair. His exact words. The squad lost a full day of preparation, finally flying out Monday instead of Sunday, sacrificing precious high-altitude acclimatization time at their camp in Pachuca. The kind of preparation window that once it's gone, it's gone. And I know what you might be thinking. Visa delay, bureaucratic hiccup, frustrating but not exactly world-altering. Here's why that reading misses it. When you zoom out and look at the full picture surrounding this tournament, this wasn't an isolated failure. It was a symptom. It's what the whole machine looks like when you press on it hard enough. The entire economic logic of hosting a World Cup is built on one thing: getting millions of international fans across your borders, into your stadiums, and spending money in your cities. The projections for this tournament had over 1 million foreign visitors coming in, each expected to spend roughly $5,000 during their stay, nearly double what an average tourist drops. That's the pitch. That's why cities spend billions on infrastructure. That's why nations compete for the bid in the first place. But the same host country running those projections spent the 12 months leading up to the tournament constructing a visa restriction framework, a travel ban architecture, and a full-scale tariff war aimed precisely at the markets, Europe, Africa, South America, and Canada, that were supposed to fill those seats. In a year when global travel shattered records, the United States was the only one of 184 tracked economies where international visitor spending actually fell. The world kept moving. It just rerouted. So when a national team with a government minister personally intervening, a charter jet, a full emergency coordination committee, and complete diplomatic backing still gets stuck at the gate, ask yourself honestly, what realistically happens to the regular family from Lagos or São Paulo or Vancouver who saved for 2 years to be there? That's the question that converts a sports headline into an economic story. And it's the exact moment Canada becomes the most important character in this entire thing. The numbers are pretty unambiguous. Canadians cut trips to the United States by somewhere between 17 and 23%, depending on the month, with Statistics Canada recording sharp, consecutive monthly declines throughout the year. We were America's single largest source of foreign visitors. Over 20 million Canadians crossed south in 2024 alone, and we pulled back harder than any other nationality on Earth. That's not random. That's not coincidence. That's a direct, measurable, financially traceable response to tariffs, to sustained political rhetoric, to 12 months of watching a relationship that was supposed to be foundational get treated as a bargaining chip in someone else's negotiation. Nobody organized a boycott. Nobody announced anything. Millions of individual Canadians quietly decided to spend their vacation somewhere the welcome mat was still out, and the cumulative arithmetic of those individual decisions turned out to be the single biggest driver of the steepest American tourism decline in 20 years. That's quiet leverage, and most people haven't fully clocked how real it is. Now, fairness matters here, so let me give the other side its due. There are people inside this system, embassy workers, tournament coordinators, public health officials, working themselves into the ground. The U.S. Embassy in Johannesburg reportedly worked through the entire weekend to get South Africa's paperwork cleared and the squad moving by Monday. That's not nothing. When the machine jammed, there were people who scrambled hard to unjam it. This isn't a story about bad faith at every level of the operation, but the policy above the desk is the problem, and the money makes that impossible to argue with. Here's the figure that made me check it 3 separate times before I believed it. Tickets to the World Cup final, July 19th, have climbed on the official platform to nearly $11,000. Top category seats on the resale market have reportedly touched figures in the millions. For context, the most expensive ticket to the 2022 World Cup final sat around $1,600. What changed isn't just inflation. For the first time in the tournament's history, FIFA introduced dynamic pricing. The same surge algorithm that makes a flight cost double the morning of departure, the same logic that turns a concert seat into a luxury purchase the closer you get to showtime. Group stage seats start at $60. Sure, but the headline matches have been pushed into a range where the sport that built its entire global identity on being the people's game, the one thing the whole world watches together regardless of income, is starting to look like a velvet rope event. 2 state attorneys general opened formal investigations into the ticketing practices. And while dynamic pricing is technically legal and common in American sports, the optics become corrosive when you layer it on top of everything else. Because here's the chain, and I want you to follow it step by step. The tariffs placed on Canada, Mexico, China, and threatened against the EU didn't just raise the cost of goods. They changed the emotional experience of crossing into America. The travel industry flagged this early and, specifically, warned that Canadians would be deterred, and the data proved them exactly right. Canadian visits collapsed. That single country's withdrawal became the dominant force in the overall tourism decline. And that decline arrives in the exact year America needs the world to enthusiastically show up. Trade policy created friction. Friction became resentment. Resentment suppressed travel. Suppressed travel now threatens the economic foundation of a tournament sold as the greatest soft power showcase in American history. A to B to C, clean and documented. And then there's Congo. The Democratic Republic of Congo qualified for their first World Cup since 1974, 52 years of waiting. And their reward was a mandatory 21-day isolation bubble demanded by the U.S. government because of an Ebola outbreak back home. The White House Task Force director delivered the message bluntly: maintain the bubble or risk being denied entry entirely. Here's what got buried in the noise. All 26 called-up players are based at European clubs. The squad had already relocated their entire pre-tournament camp to Belgium. The outbreak is centered in eastern Congo, over 1,000 kilometers from the capital, in a region no one on this squad has been anywhere near. The coach said it plainly: normal preparation, players all coming from Europe, zero connection to the affected zone. And then, while the team was already adjusting to all of that, a mayor in southern Spain banned their warm-up match against Chile over health concerns. Congo offered to play behind closed doors. No fans, no crowd, just football. The mayor still refused. I want to be genuinely careful here because this part has real nuance. The outbreak is serious. The fatality rate is frightening. Enhanced screening for travelers from affected regions is standard epidemiology, not paranoia. Any responsible host government would feel pressure to act. That caution has a real logic, and I'm not dismissing it. But a blanket 21-day isolation on athletes who demonstrably haven't been anywhere near the outbreak zone, players living and training in European cities for months, that's not precision public health. That's a blunt instrument applied to the team with the least plausible risk, while the broader framework around general fan movement stayed comparatively loose. When the response is that inconsistent, you have to ask what's actually being optimized. Safety or the appearance of control? Pull back now and look at all of it together. The stranded team, the $11,000 tickets, the quarantine bubble, the 4 million missing visitors, the largest share of them Canadian. These aren't disconnected events. They're different expressions of the same root thing, a host that spent an entire year building walls in the exact year it needed to throw the doors open. So here's my question, and I genuinely want to know where you land. When this World Cup is over and the final's been played and the stadiums go dark, does the world remember the football? Or does it remember the front door that wouldn't open? I've laid out the data. I've given you my honest read. I'm genuinely split. Drop it in the comments. I'll be reading every single one.